Hello and welcome to Spotlight Indie. I'm your host, Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, and joining me this week is Holly. Holly, how are you doing?
I'm good, Fraser. Thank you very much. I am having a good week so far. I learnt an interesting fact this week. Would you like to hear my interesting fact?
I would love to hear your interesting fact.
So my interesting fact, which I did share on my socials, is that when baby squirrels become panicked or alarmed by a situation, they will react by falling out of the nest and then lying on the floor with their arms and legs in the air, perfectly still, in a panic response. And they will just lie there like that until the anxiety subsides. And I feel like this is something I can really relate to. So yeah, I learned that fact this week, and I think that is really fascinating. What a response!
Have you got baby squirrel envy, Holly?
I mean, I do feel like this is a tactic I want to adopt in my own life, but I'm not sure how well it will work because I work from home, so there would be nobody to see me panicking. It would just be me lying on my floor, which I do anyway, quite regularly.
I would worry if you fell out of a tree every time you had anxiety, though. That would be the thing with that. You have to be very careful about how you land.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd just be falling out of trees left, right, and centre.
No tree is safe. Joining us this week is a amazing author of fantasy, urban fantasy, as well as epic fantasy, as well as cozy fantasy. It is the secretary to the BFS. Let's mention that, Mr. David. No, sorry, the epic, Mr. David Green. How are you doing,
Yes,
David?
I am doing great. I was just racking my head for a fun fact to something that I'd learned this week, and I did learn something this week. I learned two things actually. There's a crater on Pluto that is named Morgoth after Morgoth from Tolkien's works, and on the moon, Pluto's moon, Charon. Most of the craters are named after Star Trek and Star Wars characters. So there's a Skywalker crater, there's a Spock crater, there's a Vulcan crater, Kirk. There is, I think is it on Charon as well. There's a big part at the top, the Northern Cap, which is called Mordor. So it's the shape of Mordor. Yeah. So I learned that. So there you go.
If anybody thinks that these fandoms can't come together and get along, then just look at Pluto, like the dwarf planet of our dreams. It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like they are amazingly diverse facts. Like we went from baby squirrels to Pluto. Yeah. I feel like that's amazing. Yes. I have no fun facts because I'm a storyteller and make everything up. So research is for dummies. No, I'll think of a fun fact. I'm sure I can think of one. No, nothing's coming to mind. So, David, we mentioned in your intro, and you mentioned last week that you're the secretary for the BFS. So, tell us a little bit about how you got into that, about what that's like, about how that's helped you in your community and in your writing.
So I joined the British Fantasy Society in 2001 as just a member. And that's when I just started, like, my first book came out in 2001, so it was like I wanted to go to FantasyCon, and I'd never heard of the British Fantasy Society before that. So I joined it. I was like, oh, I might as well do that. And then, I'm quite I like helping people, right? So like, I like that. And obviously living in Ireland, I'm a little bit removed from everyone else. Like I can't really kind of just like go and meet up with someone for a group of writers for a drink or whatever, or catch up. So like I was like, I'll help out with the online stuff. So they wanted help with online events and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I'll help with that. And then they just kept asking me to do more things, and I was like, yeah, sure. And then they were like, our secretary is stepping down. Would you be the secretary? And I was like, are you sure you want me to do this? It sounds like a lot of responsibility. And they'll be like, yeah, it's fine, do it. You'll be great. And I was like, are you sure I'll be great? I don't know. But I did it anyway. So I've been doing that I'm in my second year doing that now. And it's great, yeah. I mean, the British Fan Society, we have tripled the membership size in the last couple of years, which is great. It's a lot more diverse than it used to be. We're obviously our full name is the British Fantasy and Horror Society, so we have to be mindful that we need to be doing horror programming as well and horror stuff for our horror members and writers. And it's just about kind of doing stuff for the writers and the professionals of the industry, and not just in England or Britain. It's like worldwide as well, but also for the readers as well and support and stuff. So we do lots of in-person events, we do a lot of online events, we do FantasyCon. We've just started a mentorship program. We have some great mentors that are involved through writing, editing, query packaging, it's great, and it's nice to kind of help out and kind of learn about other things that are going on, like other little conventions and other societies that are starting, and kind of, do you need help? Do you need us to signal boost? Can we sponsor you? And can we do this? Can we do that? Which is not what we were doing before a few years ago. But so now we're very kind of proactive about kind of getting things done. So yeah, it's great. It's nice, and it takes up. It keeps me busy anyway.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's such a great organization. It's such a great society. So if anybody is tuned into this, wants to find out more, you can find it online. The British Fantasy and Horror Society. In terms of our segment this week, the reason why people are tuned in is because they know by now that there's no such thing as a stupid question. Holly, what is our topic this week? What's our question?
Well, our topic this week on There's No Such Thing as a Stupid Question is cover art. What's it all about? Where can you find it? And more importantly, how can you afford it if you don't have a Scrooge McDuck style swimming pool full of money? Because let's face it, most indie authors don't. We are working on a limited budget. So on one of our previous episodes with the lovely Emily Inkpen, we did talk about some cover art from the indie world that we really like and found really eye-catching. So I want to open up this segment by asking you guys, which indie covers have you seen and remembered and thought, do you know what, that really makes me want to pick up that book?
That's a great question, Holly. I feel like the thing about indie covers is that they fall into like two different categories. They fall into the obviously self-made and the obviously not self-made. As in, and there's nothing wrong with making your own covers. I've made my own covers, but I feel like when you see like a book that's been produced, cover art that's been produced by an artist, that's what they do, you can tell the difference. Like if I compare, for example, my first book, New Yesterday, and the cover art there, or even Yes Tomorrow, let's go earlier, let's go Yes Tomorrow. Okay, it's got a very basic image on the front, very basic font and all of that. Compare that with something like Mushroom Blues by Adrian M. Gibson, and the beauty and detail that there is on that cover, and you see worlds apart. My cover looks terrible compared to Adrian's cover. But it's just a great, I think Felix Ortiz that did that cover for Adrian. And it's just a great example of how you can take something and just give it to an artist and really make it soar and really make it sing. With being also having connections with Fanfi Addict, I was able to get a look at some of Adrian's concepts that he was able to send over to Felix to work on it, because Adrian himself is a fantastic artist and could very well have done his own cover. But just seeing what Felix did with the concepts Adrian sent, it opened my eyes in a whole new way to be like, right, these guys know what they're doing. The people who are the illustrators and the artists, amazing what they can bring. But I would say that that's a really good example of a cover which just absolutely sings. That's indie.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Mushroom Blues, it's brilliant, and it shows you exactly what you're going to get from that book as well. There is no mistaking what kind of tone you're going to get or what kind of style of read you're going to get. David, what about you? Is there any that are sticking out in your mind?
Yeah, there's a couple. So I tend not to like covers with characters on the front. right? But there's some great ones, and it's the style in which they're done. I really like Trudy Sky's 13th hour. So book one of the Cruel Gods. I like it. It's just it looks. I love the typography on it as well. I think typography really. It's one of those things that sometimes people kind of forget about with the covers, because as Frasier was saying before, sometimes there is that necessity where you have to kind of make the covers yourself, or what you can afford. And sometimes the image might be amazing, but the typography just looks like it, you can tell that it's from Canva or something like that. And getting, like, if you can't afford to kind of push out and go for like a cover artist at a high amount, that little expense of the typography can sometimes make the difference. And I really like. I'm trying to think of the name of it, because I know the name of it, but I don't know if I can swear on this. And there was another name for it as well. Let me just think. So this quest is Bull, right? And it's a list RPG story, but they changed the name of it. It was called something else. I have it on my Kindle, but I can't remember what it was called before it. But it's a series of lit RPG books, which I quite like reading them stuff, and they're kind of hit and miss sometimes. But these covers are really nice because they're like really kind of like video game-esque, of like kind of like 1980s style. So it's something you'd imagine seeing on like Legend of Zelda, like the old boxes that you used to get for that. And there's 4 of the books, so it's this quest is bullshit. It's all like this something is bananas, this something is something, and it's like they're really, really funny books, and the covers are like they match perfectly the kind of the humor that you're going to get in the books, like the style. They're not too serious, but like so it's a really great job of saying like this is what you're going to find inside of this book, which I think is the most important thing with a cover. Like you don't want to be reading like a grimdark cover, a grimdark book, but the cover's like all bright colors and people are like hugging each other and stuff on the front. You want it to kind of be like Holly's book cover. It's like dark and brooding, and that it's what you're in for. And that's the whole point of a cover.
And just picking up on that, David, I think a couple of examples of how that works really well when you compare and contrast is the cover that Travis Baldry put together for Legends and Lattes originally. And then somebody like Anna Mosikat with her Behind Blue Eyes series. You look at the covers and instantly the tone, the mood, the atmosphere, it gives you an into the book and what it's going to be like. So I think when you compare and contrast those 2 types of covers, very, very different, but they're very, very different books. And I think that's a really, really good way of thinking about what you want from a cover as an indie, is how do I reflect the tone and what is it going to be? And what was really cool is when Legends and Lattes went trad, they only tweaked the cover a tiny, tiny bit. And it was like, well, that just shows you how good that cover was, What about you, Holly? What's some examples you've got?
So I did mention a few on the episode with Emily, but there are a couple that stick out to me. I definitely agree. Trudy Sky's covers are absolutely amazing. I will also say Rob J. Hayes always does really good covers. Absolutely love the style, love the colour schemes, love the tone of them. I can't think of any more off the top of my head, so I'm going to move on. But so we've established a few examples there of what we think are really good covers. So what we need to do now is to help other indie authors to work out where they can find cover artists, because it can be really tough to try and find someone to work with, and also how you can budget for and plan for your cover, because let's be honest, they can get really expensive and it can be quite prohibitive for authors who are on a strict budget, which many of us are. So to start us off, let's talk a little bit about the various places where you can find cover artists, because let's be honest, when you ask on the internet, where can I find a cover artist? You get the same 3 names coming up all the time, and those names are fantastic. However, because they are the only 3 names that come up all the time, they're always fully booked. So where else can you go to find artists? David, where have you found artists before?
So a really, really great place to find artists is by when there's a cover reveal on places like Fanfi Addicts and other places like that, is to read it all the way through, because they'll usually say who the cover is by. If you like it, you can try and get in touch with them. The other place as well is by reading the books, because something that doesn't happen very much in trad but does happen a lot of the time in self-published and indie is that in the inside of the book, the first thing you see is who the cover art is by. So if you really like the cover art, and it's even if you've not read the book and you've seen it on Amazon, you can do the look inside thingy. You can usually find the cover artist from there. And I think that's a really, really great place to start. So if you see something that you like, chances are you'll find out who it's by and you can get in touch with them.
Yeah, and I feel as well like there's talking to indie writers is another really good way of finding recommendations for cover artists, because the chances are that the indie writers you talk to will have also had the same problem. So if they will be able to recommend people, or they will be able to tell you about experiences that they've had that weren't so great. So I feel like a lot of the great cover artists that are out there kind of rely on recommendations. So if you are struggling to find a cover artist, you might want to give thought as to how active you are as a part of the community, how many indie writers you're actually sort of engaging with, and because the more of that you get involved with, the more answers to these kinds of questions will become really apparent to you. That's been my experience anyway. So yeah, just get involved with the community if you're looking for a cover artist. Don't just go and ask everyone. Ask the indies and the ones that you engage with.
Yeah, and it's about being specific as well. So if you like Holly was saying, if you ask just in general, like on BlueSky or somewhere, who's a good indie cover, who's a good fantasy cover artist, you'll get a couple of names, but it might not be right for the kind of story that you're telling. And a good way of kind of figuring that out is look at the things that are popular, because they usually have very good covers for what subgenre they're in. So it's if you're doing something which is like you're in your mind and you've looked on your subgenre and all the covers that are good are all a certain type that are kind of like more iconography style covers, and then you go and ask for someone who usually does like hand drawn painted covers, it's probably not going to be the right fit for your book, and you're probably just going to be wasting each other's time, because you'll be like, well, I had this in mind, and they might be like, well, I don't really do that. But it's also then as well, like if you do have something in mind specifically that is kind of like more hand drawn and stuff like that, do your research, because everyone has strengths in different areas. So you might get some artists that their strength is landscape covers, right? You might get some that are like more city based ones. And if you ask someone who works mainly in city based covers to do a landscape one, they might not do exactly what it is that you're looking for. So it's all about doing that research and just knowing kind of what you want when you're going into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one thing I will add as well into the pool of where can you find artists is to just remember that there is a big world out there that exists outside of the internet. I know it can be so easy to think that we have to source everything online, but actually a really useful way to find artists is to go where artists are. So go and check out your local conventions, local art fairs, go and talk to the people there, because a lot of them may not be book cover artists, because it may not have occurred to them that that is an opportunity for them. So my first cover artist that I worked with, I went down and saw at a convention. We had a chat, and he does graphic novels and he does artwork, but had never actually done a cover for a novel. And I said, well, why do you want to give it a go? I'd be really excited to work with you. And that whole relationship came from just going down to this convention and having a chat with someone. The other thing I will add as well is that while it is really, really important to have an artist who is talented doesn't always mean someone who has been around for a long time. There is so much talent that is emerging. So going out and placing advertisements with local art colleges or with universities saying, I'm looking for someone to do this project. Would anyone like to submit a portfolio for me to take a look at? It is a way to get some really good art, but it is also a way to support somebody who is just starting out in their art career. And as we all know, it is equally as hard to be an indie artist as it is to be an indie novelist or an author. So the more we can support each other in those beginning stages, the better. So yeah, just go out, chat to people, meet people in real life, and then you can just expand that pool that you can sort of pluck all your options from.
And as well, think back on when you were at college and, at school and at uni, and you had friends that were doing art. You may not have spoken to them for a while, but guess what? Like you can reach out and you can say, hey, are you still doing art? You might already have these things at your disposal. It's just a case of just thinking outside the box sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you have sourced your indie artist, it is time to start the ball rolling on your cover. So, David, for you, when you're making, well, obviously you don't make the cover, but you direct how you want the cover to look. How important is it for that kind of process to be a team process?
Yeah, it really is. So I recently got a load of new covers for my books. So I've just done this recently because my books were with an indie press, and I was never satisfied with them because they were a North American press, and their taste in covers is quite different from. I think you can see that when you look at books, particularly trad ones. You get like a US cover and you get a UK cover, and my taste more towards the UK ones. I kind of felt that I had my input with the indie press in terms of what I wanted, but it wasn't quite listened to as much until the last one, when it was like, well, we think he knows what he's talking about, so we'll follow it a little bit. I felt they kind of looked a little bit white, which wasn't what the series is at all. It's like, it's not quite grimdark, but it's kind of, it's epic fantasy, high stakes epic fantasy, and I felt they kind of looked a little bit YA. So that was one of my first things when I got the rights back, and I was rewriting the first book, and I was like, I'm gonna have to get new covers for all of it. So I found the cover artist that I wanted to work with, because I knew the kind of style that I wanted to go with, and I knew that they could do that style. And there was like a lot of collaboration, and it was very easy because like the cover artist was amazing. But the first thing I said to them was, I don't want them to look YA. Nothing against YA. YA is great, but it's like I said before, if you've got a certain style of book or a certain type of book, you want the cover to match what it's about. You don't want to be, because there's some people that will be like, I won't read YA, it looks YA, I'm not going to read it. Or there might be some people that are like, this looks a bit grimdark, I'm not going to read this because I don't like reading. And your book might not be that. So getting that clear, the first conversations that you have with someone is like, this is really the tone of the book. This is what the book's about. The cover has to match that. And then for me, like, I do have an art degree, so I can draw and what have you. So I will I did do sketches of what I had in mind and sort of said here. But I do think it's like, I do think it's like editing. Like I edit for other people, but I do think it's important to get another set of perspective on things, another set of eyes, to kind of go like, this isn't quite what you've got in mind here, what you've sketched out wouldn't quite work for, as a thumbnail, which is really important, or this. The color scheme might be better this way. It brings out, you end up getting the best version of the thing that's in your head. So yeah, the collaboration straight away from the first conversation is really, really important.
And as well, like when it comes to collaboration with an artist, they can take an idea that you've got and elevate it. Whereas when you're doing the cover yourself, it's only going to be as good as you can make it. The covers that I've done myself, I'm happy with them. They work because they tell you what the book is like. But when I got to work with artists on Stitch Between Worlds, got to work with Marley Bertolucci, who is an amazing artist who did the digital cover, and Flo McGrath, who is incredible at what she does. I love her art. She's doing the paperback and it's not out yet, but you'll see that art's amazing. Working with them just elevated every idea that I had, and I could never have made the kind of covers that they've made. So it helps you to appreciate the art for what it is, that it is art. I mean, I'm happy with my cover. My covers are fine, but if I'd had an artist involved, they would have been amazing. So it's that whole thing of you really do get what you pay for. You need that service in order to elevate the ideas that you have. But if you can't afford it, don't worry. You can still produce a good cover. You can produce a cover that represents your book well. It's just never really going to hit the same kind of high notes that an artist could take you to. So, in terms of collaboration, the collaboration is fantastic. And if you get an artist that collaborates well with you, hold on to them. But if you can't collaborate with somebody, just give real thought as to how you want your book represented on your cover.
Yeah. I want to kind of jump onto that point a little bit, Frasier, because obviously you've had this experience of building your own covers. So for some indie authors, that is always going to be the only option because of limitations on budget. And as you say, you can make some really great covers yourself. So if that is something that someone is looking to do, what are the things that they can do to try and upskill themselves or to try and give themselves a better chance of producing something that can be on a level with other covers that we've mentioned?
The thing that you need most is practice with software, because there are plenty of images you can find that are copyright free. There are plenty of things you can go out and take pictures, and use them on your covers. But if you don't know how to manipulate them in the software, you're never going to be able to put them together in a way that looks and feels like a cover. I'll give you an example. So these are my first three books here. So my first three books, you've got this one, which was Yes Tomorrow, which was very clearly just an image with cropped onto a thing, very basic. And it's cool, it works. It ties in well with the next book. And you can tell that I'd learned a bit more between that book and this book, which is New Yesterday. And this is a sci-fi thriller. And the reason it looks the way it does is because for thrillers, what you want is all of the lines pointing towards the middle. Apparently, that works really well. You also want the title in red. Apparently those two things really, really work for thrillers. But my final cover that I did myself with Time's Ellipse is the one that is the best, because this was the cover that came out and people said, it gives me vibes of like a Christopher Nolan movie. And I was like, it's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to look a bit like a movie poster. And I want all of my books to look like movie posters. With all of these kinds of covers, you have to meet a level of expectation. Like if you do a really experimental cover that is really bizarre, people might just scroll past it because they think this is an indie book. Do they know what they're doing? If you make a book that looks like what it's supposed to look like I did with New Yesterday, people think, okay, this is a sci-fi thriller because it looks like a sci-fi thriller. And that's the key that you've got to, get clued into if you're going to be designing your own covers. You have to know about the market and what covers that are like your books look like. You have to make your books look like those covers, and in order to do that, you need to be able to manipulate the software that you can get at your disposal. So you might find a better investment is in improving the software you're using. Research it. There's loads of different people you can talk to who make way better covers than I can, that you will be able to find out and say, yep, I use this type of software. Look into it and try and find that out, because you will find that you can probably learn the skills to be able to do a decent cover, but it is going to take time. It's going to take repeated attempts, and you're going to want to make sure you're able to produce something that looks like what it's supposed to be.
No, that is a good point about making covers to market. David, what about you? Do you have any kind of tips or advice that you would give authors who are looking to make their own covers?
I think that thing again is just like knowing what it is, as Frasier was doing, like knowing the subgenre is very, very important. Like that, because like we were saying for your second book, where all the lines are pointing towards the character which is expected for that kind of genre. You kind of, again, it's that everything that you do with a book is you're making a promise to a reader of that fan of that genre. Because hopefully you can pull people in from different subgenres that might like different things, but a lot of time the people that are going to be reading your books are people that are, if you write a thriller, people that predominantly going to read it are fans of thrillers. So you want to promise them that like this is the thriller. It might be a little bit different to what you're expecting. There might be different things that I've done differently, but there is going to be certain expectations that you have to hit. And the cover is one of those promises that you're making to them that like they know what it's going to be. Like the title you think of a title for something, you want to say something with the title. It's like, this is this kind of book, right? So doing that research on what it is your book is belonging to is really, really important. And but you do also want to stand out as well. So it's really, really tricky. Like, so you don't want to go too far out there, but then you don't want it to look like everything else, because you know, part of the whole thing with self-publishing and everything is that we're kind of like, we're looking to carve our own niche and find our audience. We don't have the thousands and thousands. Most of us don't have that kind of money that trad publishers do, or people at the higher end of self-publishing have, where they can, you know, throw it all at advertising. So we are looking at ways to stand out, but we don't want to stand out in a bad way. So like, do that research, look at what is popular in those genres that you are doing, hit those kind of expectations, and yeah, I think, like I said before, I think about the font. The font, I think, is just it's so important, and you can see it. And I don't mean to be mean or anything like that, but you can see some books, you see them probably often, where there's like really nice cover art, but the font just doesn't suit, and it kind of brings down the whole quality of the cover, and it makes it kind of feel like a little bit disposable, I suppose, which is like a real danger in the writing world these days. Anyway, there's like so many different pressures to make writing seem disposable, so you don't want to do that with your own stuff. So yeah, really kind of look at that, look at the font, look at the placement of the font, and try not to make covers too busy as well. I think is with too much text on it at the front. Like, you know, you don't have to have like everything. There's a real art behind it. So look into it and find it and do your research and then just do your best.
And with the art behind it and everything like that, just like jumping onto that, David, if you want to find out more about, you know, how to make cover art and the tricks that you can put with regard to how big the font should be in relation to the rest of the image, the placement of it, all this kind of stuff, just YouTube it, because there is so many tutorials you can find about how to put together a cover and how it should be formatted and how it should look. So don't feel like that information is not out there. It's quite readily available, and you'll be able to find it through YouTube. But do the research first. And research is a really key part as well if you're going to use an image, because there has been a big backlash recently about the use of AI images in covers. We want to give humans the spotlight for the art that is being produced. You can get a lot of copyright-free images, but you have to do the research to make sure that image has been produced by a human, or whether it's been AI generated. That means looking at the artist, looking at their other work, looking at the picture itself. You know, you've got to be a lot more careful these days about which pictures you select for a cover. So just scrutinize it, do your research, look into it, don't rush, take your time and get it right.
Yeah, and I think one thing as well to mention is that there are plenty of artists out there who actually do pre-made covers, which are fantastic. You can select ones that suit your book. There's ones that are suitable for different genres. So it is always worth going and having a look. If there is an artist that you like the look of and you've seen a cover that they've done, go and see if they do pre-made covers, because a lot of them offer them and they just tend to be a little bit more budget friendly. It does mean that you might have a cover that is similar to someone else's, but do you know what? Sometimes you've just got to do what you've got to do. The other thing that I would add to that as well is that it is also possible to do a sort of hybrid cover as well if you're looking to keep costs down but still support indie artists. So one thing I've done in the past is I've gone to an artist. I've worked with an amazing artist called Dawn Larder several times on different projects. And what she does is quite often she will just produce an illustration for me, which I will then take and add to the cover that either I or someone else in the project has produced. So, and that can be the difference between paying, you know, like £100 or whatever it is for an illustration and paying, you know, 800 to 1,000 for a full cover. So if you can teach yourselves those skills that we mentioned, so like the typography, knowing the market, and also I would say just basic things like colour matching as well. So you know what colours work in what genres, what colours work together. and just keep it really simple as well would be another tip. I've seen some amazing books that have got covers that are purely typography and maybe a little bit of patterning or a little bit of like iconography. That can work just as well as an amazing cover that's got characters and explosions and things on it. And sometimes simple is better. What you have to remember is that your cover art has to look good on a thumbnail. It has to look good on the internet when people are scrolling through things like Amazon or bookstores. So just make sure it works for all those different outlets as well.
Yeah. And also, just final thing that I want to sort of jump in on as well. I didn't realize I had so much to say about this. What is going on? Is that designing a front cover is very different to designing a paperback cover, which wraps around. So case in point, the front cover for New Yesterday looks like this. It was an absolute nightmare to get the spine as a different color and just for positioning it. And when you look at the paperback front and beginning, what you see on the back, on the front, sorry, there's the guy, there's Adam, and this character here. On the back, there's a lady. And then they kind of like meet inside the book, which is why they're both looking at one another this way. So that's the reason for the design for the front and the back. You don't have to think about that if you're just doing a digital book. All you have to think about is that, whereas if you are doing a wraparound cover, give thought to, first of all, how complicated you're going to make it if you're going to change the spine. Compare that to Time's Ellipse, and it's all just the same thing all of the way through. Where's the book? So it's just dead easy. It's just the same background that's just wrapped around. So it was so much easier to do this one than it was to put a different colored spine on this one. So think about stuff like that. Think about how the paperback is going to look as well as the front cover. And don't just think, oh, I've got a really good front cover, I can now do a paperback. There's a different type of artistry to each of those different mediums.
Absolutely. So before we start to wrap this up, I have one final question, and that is, what are the pitfalls that we see indie authors falling into when it comes to covers? We've mentioned the typography and the fact that that can completely change the look of a book and the feel of it. What other things do we see quite often that new authors in particular do that would be a good idea to maybe rethink? David, what do you kind of see?
Well, there's the elephant in the room, I suppose, of AI. It's cheap. It's sometimes it's hard to even know you're using it if you're buying it, as Frasier was saying, if you're buying imagery off the internet. Sometimes, you might not know it, so just try to avoid it. There's a certain look to AI covers a lot of the time, and they don't have that weight. And obviously, there's other things, the morality of it. There's the effect that it has on the environment and everything like that, because AI is such a massive drain on resources and everything. So there's all that kind of stuff. And if you're a new author and you're tempted with it, you're not going to survive the backlash from using it if your book makes a splash. There's plenty of ones that go out there and no one ever notices, but if you've got your book does become known and it's got an AI cover, then there's going to be a huge discussion about it. And as a new author, you're probably not going to navigate that in a more kind of benign kind of sense. If you're doing a series, make sure that the covers match each other in the series. You don't want them to get wildly different from other ones that are there. Obviously, you want them to be different, but you want them to have the same style. You want them to be able to look at them on a shelf, or you want to be able to look at them at a table if you're at a convention, or on a thumbnail or on a promotion site, and you want to be able to look at them and go, yeah, that's the same series. I can say that it's just the same, but they're different books because they've got a different color scheme, or they've got a slightly different, thing that is the focus of the cover. But the typography needs to be the same. The placement of the typography should be the same. If you have things that are on the spine, make sure they're the same on each cover as well, and the placement of all the back matter, and even the size of the book. You want to make sure the sizes of the books are the same as well. Which my publisher for my urban fantasy book did not do on their last one, and I was quite annoyed about it, but my readers were more annoyed at me about it. It's like, I had nothing to do with this, but people were like, "Look what it looks like on my shelf. It's like it's bigger than the other ones." So I was like, "I know, it's the same on mine." So yeah, it's all these kind of little details, and obviously, as you write in series, books get bigger. They tend to get bigger, and formatting is a problem. This is probably something that you may cover in the future. You might have covered in the past, but formatting, especially if you're going through KDP and Ingram Spark, it's like you might as well pray to the gods for help sometimes to see if they're going to like go, yes, this is fine. You'll stay in all of the guidelines that they give you. You'll do it, and then you'll load it up, and then it's like, this is wrong. And you're like, why is it wrong? There's this one thing on this one page in the book, and you're looking at it, you're like, what is wrong with it? I don't know what's wrong. So there's a tendency as your book get bigger, the formatting it's harder to do to get these things to fit. So that the easy solution is go, well, I'll make the book bigger because then it gives me more room. Don't do it if the other books are a certain size. Try to keep them uniform.
Absolutely. And I can say that I have very much been there as well. So I feel your pain on that one.
Yeah, I had a hardback as book 3 of a series, and book 1, 2, and 4 were paperback. So I decided that I was going to buy the paperback so that it would match. Bought the paperback, took the hardback off the shelf, put the paperback on, and the book 3 paperback is bigger than the books 1, 2, and 4. And I was like, but I just replaced it to stop this from happening. But yeah, so I really feel that, David. But like, I think one of the other pitfalls that new indie authors fall into, or just indie authors in general fall into, is just the idea that, you know, you look at something and you think, do you know what, this is this is good, this is okay, yeah, let's go with this, because your head is so full of all the other things that you're doing that what you want to do is you want to tick it off the list. Don't settle for just an okay, I've done it book cover, you know, because it's not something you tick off your list. It's your main tool for marketing your book. It's the thing everyone's going to judge your book on is the cover. So take your time and get it right. Don't just think, right, it took me 6 months to write the book and a week to put the cover together. Give it time, the time it deserves, because a good cover is going to make you stand out, like David said, and it's going to do your writing, it's going to service your writing and give your writing what it needs. So don't just settle for a book cover.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things then I'll just tack on to the end there before I hand back to Frasier to wrap up. So when it comes to book covers, really important to remember that on-screen colours and print colours are completely different. So be very aware that when you are selecting your cover picture, if you have certain colours within it, especially darker colours, on a printed version, they are going to look completely different. So just make sure that you are remaining aware of that. I will also say as well, there is no reason why you cannot get feedback on a cover. So we do it for our books. We send them out to beta readers. We send them out to alpha readers. We get that feedback. There is nothing stopping you from doing the same thing with a cover. Send it out to some people, get some feedback, ask them what's working about it and what isn't. That can be really, really handy. And lastly, I will also say that the most important thing for an indie author to remember is that you do not have to spend thousands of pounds on a cover art. There are so many ways to do it within budget. And let's face it, indie artists need support. They need us to be giving them work just as much as we want people to buy our books. And if you're an indie artist, getting 10, 12, 15, 20 indie authors who are taking you on for smaller projects like an illustration that's going to cost £100, that is a really, really good way to support them. So don't think that you have to spend loads of money. You absolutely don't. What you should do is spend some money because those artists need your support. Anyway, that is the end of my questions about cover art. Frasier, I will hand back to you now to close us off.
How we went really super deep into that one, right? It's like, I was fully expecting to be like, pictures, yay! And instead we're like, yeah, it's amazing.
I didn't know that David's got a degree in art. I mean, how fortuitous is that?
It's one of those things that you do when you're younger, and it's like, what am I gonna do with this when I'm older? It's like I don't know. I could be an art teacher, I suppose, in a different life, but I'm not anymore.
Clearly leading. All of this has been leading up to this very moment.
See,
Yeah, definitely.
even more epic, David. We're not even content with the epic David Green. It's the even more epic David Green after this. So thank you so much for joining us, David. And for everybody who's enjoyed you being with us over the past 3 weeks, where can they find you?
So yeah, if you still want to hear more from me after these 3 weeks, you can find me at my website here, which is davidgreenwriter.com. That's all my socials are on there, my newsletter, which contains my home address, as we talked about last week. And just drop me a line. I'll be happy to talk to you. And if anyone's read any of my books, ever want to talk to me about them, ask me anything about them, go ahead. It's always an absolute pleasure when someone wants to talk to you about something that you've created. So, yes.
Epic stuff. Thank you. Holly, what about you?
If people want to find me, they can find me on all of the usual socials. They can also find Spotlight Indie on Instagram, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Facebook, X, and BlueSky. We do post new content every Sunday, so please do check back to see what is coming up. And we will be posting some updates on the event very shortly as well, so keep an eye out for that.
Fantastic. And at Frasier Armitage, everywhere you look. Join us next week, everybody, when we will have another guest with us, bringing us some more good news. And until then, just stay awesome, keep writing, keep creating, and whatever else you do, I guess. Totally run out of steam. Goodbye.